All right, episode 221. Today, you know, realtors are under fire. You've all heard it. You've seen it on everything.
Everybody loves this right now.
And so we're going to debunk some of the false propaganda that's going on right now. So let's get started right now.
I want some haters on this.
All right, episode 221. You know what we're doing today? We're doing a little continuation from last week, which is we're breaking down, you know, realtors under fire. You know, when we're going to break down and debunk the false propaganda going on. So we've got, this is what we're going to be using today. There is, it's 7 items that seven mainstream media falsehoods post NAR settlement. And this is from Inman that we're going to use. So if you subscribe to Inman, you can go pull this up.
Inman has a paywall, but I will say that there's an FAQ on facts.realtor that if you want to go to, that I believe they probably pulled this from because I read it and this is super similar to that conversation.
So facts.realtor on there. Great. Yeah. And look, today's show is brought to you by Mortgage Mike. If you want to get into that Mortgage Mike stamp of approval, he's just giving loans left and right to people. You just need to go to mmgloans.com because he's debunking all the myths out there for realtors. He's making you look good, and he's telling every client that you deserve more than the commission you're making.
We got an offer out for one of our buyers right now.
Let's do it. Mortgage Mike, mmgloans.com. And then Theron Smith. Theron just did a home warranty for one of my clients. We closed on Monday. And so he's giving that hard shell protection on every house out there. So if you're needing to get a home warranty on your property for your clients, whomever it may be, Theron Smith's the guy at Armadillo Home Warranty, armadillo.1/TOR, TORE. And then property management, Dana Wynn over at Homeward Property Management, the best property management company in Dallas-Fort Worth. Just go to homewarddfw.com and just tell her that the guys from the only real estate podcast worth listening to sent you. And then if you want a show like this, Jesse knows how to make you look and sound really good.
Way better than you probably deserve.
Because this isn't our real voices.
Not at all.
No.
I actually sound like one of those little voice filters that you hear on Call of Duty videos.
Yeah, exactly. So go to torstudios.com and then look for the Tor webinars that will be being launched. It's been on our calendar the last couple of days. Yeah. We've been working through it. And, you know, we want to make sure that the product that Jesse puts out is amazing because you only get one chance to make a first impression, Kelderman.
You know what I'm loving, though? I scroll up and down upon my feed on all these social networks now that I'm on. If you want some real entertainment, go follow me on TikTok. I'm a little unfiltered there. But like I am noticing, like there are so many people. What were you just talking about? My point was around what the hell you just said.
It's a great question.
Damn it! Wish we could rewind ourselves.
Our voices and first impression.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyways,
Studios.
I lost it.
Webinars.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Move it along.
Yeah. How was lunch?
It was good.
Okay.
No, lunch is fine. No, I lost myself in my point because it literally had to do with your last little statement, and I totally effed it up. So whatever.
Something about your Facebook feed, the socials.
I know, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
It was
well, let's break this down. We don't. Force is not with us today. He is down in Austin, doing whatever people do in Austin, Texas. I don't even know.
I'm going to San Antonio this weekend.
Oh, fighting the Alamo?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Gonna go walk the river walk.
Yeah. What do you? All I know about San Antonio and the Riverwalk is there's that Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Yeah, Victoria has an art show. Okay. So we're going down there for that and going to meet up with some people. But she found this sandwich place she sent me today, and it was super exciting.
Down there?
Yeah. I'll report back.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll TikTok about it.
Which one is it?
What a crazy Easter weekend it's going to be for you.
As opposed to hiding a bunch of eggs for 9 to 17-year-old boys.
What if you do it for
yourself? They just want money. Easter actually gets super expensive the older you get because then they expect these little plastic money eggs.
Yep.
You know,
in our world, Easter is like a second Christmas because Heather likes to buy like gifts.
Katie does too.
Yeah, and I'm like, wait,
drives me crazy.
Why are we getting clothes? Why is the Easter Bunny bringing clothes?
No idea.
They don't knit. That's Brian Force's Easter bunny. So all right, let's break this down. Obviously, just judging by the drop off in live viewers today compared to last week.
I haven't shared it out. This is actually part of the reason I was frazzled. Is we're trying some different things as far as just talking about this behind the scenes. And I love talking about this on the show. One of the things that we've always been super transparent about is like the guts of how we do this. And one of the things that both Nick and I have been able to experience, and it's part of the reason that we're having this conversation again today, is because there is so much crazy conversation, and some of it is justified and some of it's nuts. And so we're trying to kind of interact with other social medias and other things because we're limited on the way we share this out, which is why I lost my train of thought earlier, and also why our viewers aren't out there because I haven't shared out jack yet.
Well, that and just like, people
look exhausted by it too.
Look, I think real estate agents are exhausted by this topic already.
I feel like I've been fighting for like 10 days.
Yes. And some of this it feels like we're fighting out of fear. And, on one of the calls I was on the past week, there's been so many just kind of ebbing and flowing with how to understand this, was that, us as the real estate agent industry, we're going through grief, right? And in the beginning, it was anger. Right, we're definitely worth this. We're definitely worth that, and then it comes down to what is the final steps? Is 5 steps? Is the last one's acceptance? And I don't think a lot of us are there yet. But
I've had this commented at me pretty frequently in the comment section, because I know part of my passion around this has just been that, like, I do fundamentally hate that 1.5 million real estate agents are the direction of the ire of like 10 million homeowners because they all think they've been screwed. Like I said this in a comment to somebody today. I can show you marketing from 5 or 6 years ago that I personally had a tiered commission structure. Yeah. Like, it has always been negotiable. I'm not saying every agent has ever been negotiable with you personally, Jeff.
Yeah.
But like this idea that 1.5 of us were out to jam up the general public has become kind of the object of my attention lately.
Let's break this down a little bit. So we're going to debunk, and hopefully we can get through all 7. Jesse, you pull up the other, because you double-sided printing, and it makes it tough.
Got a flippity do.
Tor Studios is great, but Jesse's not. He's not the best.
Printer,
he's not the best printer person. So
I need to work on my printing skills.
That's right. And your faxing skills. Because look, we're gonna start faxing again.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. We're gonna start showing our worth because we have a fax machine.
Exactly. Technology makes us useless.
But this first point that the media is making to consumers and debunking is that, number one, the settlement forces real estate brokers to reduce their compensation. Right. So a lot of this is hearing that, all right, real estate agents now have to reduce it. Right. And you see, I think we've all seen the CNN article that the 6% commission is gone.
Yeah.
And look, that's false. Right. And I know that this has been the biggest one, because in outside of our industry, this isn't just real estate agents talking about it. You've got the president talked about it. Yeah. There, the president's press secretary talked about it. She used the word getting rid of junk fees. And I think that she definitely misspoke. On that portion about it. I've had more non-real estate agents bring this up to me just out of the blue.
I've been most confused by that I haven't heard more about the Biden side of this. When Biden said the thing about essentially puts 10 grand back in your, I mean, he said a number, right? Like
something like that.
It was $10,000. Like I wish we could stitch in videos, because that's exactly what he said. And I've been most confused by the fact that that's been the thing I've heard the least about, right? I thought for sure when I heard he had said that, I was like, here we go in the comment section of everywhere now. Well,
yeah. So number one, this settlement right now, and by the way, this has not been ratified. No. There has to be, in my opinion, there's going to be changes on this before we get to the July part. But the settlement in no way establishes any standard or limitation on realtors for what they may charge or the services they may elect to deliver. So, right now it has, realtor fees, it says realtor fees in realtor fees have in every market. You're going to find different comp plans.
Well, and here's what I'm finding in the conversation that's happening publicly, though. It's not so much that people are pushing back against this idea that there are definitely people out there who are uneducated and say like real estate fees are going away. What I'm seeing more is that people feel duped, right?
Yep.
And that the conversation is, we didn't know those fees were included. Now that we know, we got you, right? And I think that's the lesson for agents to understand in the conversations they're going to have going forward. Even if it's not a hostile conversation, you are definitely going to understand that like the consumer overall is going to have more awareness and want to talk to you about this. And you have to have an answer for it, regardless of whether or not they said your fees have to be reduced. People are going to want to talk to you about a reduction in fees now.
Yeah. And this is how, in my opinion, how powerful the media still is, right? So, you know, we've had this falling out with the media when it comes to this whole, fake news. And then all of a sudden, this comes out. We believe what we want to believe to justify our own actions.
Confirmation bias is strong.
Yes. And so, we're already hearing it with conversations with clients about, oh, I heard I don't have to offer a commission.
Yeah.
Right. And first and foremost, that's number two. The settlement will prohibit sellers from paying a commission to a buyer's agent. That is false.
Yeah.
Right. Right now, it's saying that just like before, it has always been negotiable in the first place. Now, the agents that you may have hired made it seem like it wasn't negotiable. That probably is a little bit more on them. That may also be more on they weren't very educated themselves on this.
Of course.
Because, I've seen some I've seen some attorneys really, really break this down at a high level. And they were, first and foremost, they were saying, number one, and I think we talked about on last week's show, is that whatever fee that agent charges, they were the ones electing to offer a buyer's agency, fee or comp or commission. And so, in my opinion, I think most agents didn't explain it that way. They said, we have to do this.
We have talked on this show for 220 other episodes about agent incompetence. This actually has been a content boom for me, because I've thought about going back and getting shows from 5 years ago where the three of us sat right here and talked about this exact thing, how agents have to be better at explaining the contract and explaining what they do. And I don't blame I blame consumers for jumping the gun on this current situation. I don't blame consumers for being a little bit confused, though. Agents do, and we know that we have talked about this, we have worked with them. They do not have a clue 49% of the time where you're working with an agent who hasn't done more than 4 deals a year, right? Like, we've known this for a long time. I hate that the entire industry is under attack by this whole thing, but it's absolutely relevant to the conversation. And people should be able to have more control over the value that's being offered to them. I don't think that a lot of sellers are going to immediately elect to stop paying, even though we started the show with a story about it. I think there is intelligent sellers are going to understand the value in doing that. And they are probably going to ask a lot more for that service, and rightfully so. That's fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I believe that, number one, what you'll start to see happening is you're going to hear more and more. There's going to be more stories out there about how Matt, we'll use you, right? Kelderman just sold this property after another agent didn't. And the reason why is that the seller elected to work with Matt and his 150-point selling plan. And they also did offer, a co-oping buyer's agent commission or buyer's agent fee, whatever we're going to call it, after July. And that helped secure the sale of the property in X days, X amount of time. In my opinion, I do believe that we're going to start seeing more boastful realtors after this deal, because they're going to need to stand out more to really show their value, instead of just the kind of flash in the pan stuff that we see right now. So we actually might make it a little bit worse. I actually would be completely okay with the conversation changing dramatically to how I saved and sold faster and gave my clients more equity and sold their home faster than pictures of fucking real estate agents getting off of goddamn helicopters with red bottom shoes on, right? Like that is a huge part of this, yes. Right? The television culture, Jesse, number 3 is missing. The television culture around like what we do is all because that everybody thinks we're making 30 grand every single transaction too, yeah. Right? So hopefully the boastfulness is directed in a way that's palatable, because I mean, if I was making 30 grand on every deal, then
yeah, I wouldn't be on TikTok talking to these people.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
I'd be chilling.
Well, I'd be out there selling more houses.
Yeah, man.
I mean, let's be real. Like, so again, you know, that was number two. Number two is the settlement will prohibit sellers from paying a commission to a buyer's agent. That's, again, completely false. And so we're going to see some of the things change. It's going to be, you know, it's more transparent. I've seen some of the way the brokerages have updated it, and it'll say seller agrees to pay this. They also agree to offer this to a buyer's agent. It's more clear cut.
Yeah. And
it could be more clear cut on zero. It could be a flat fee amount. It could be a percentage amount, whatever that may be. And there's a buddy of mine that I saw posting a story. Jesse, since I can't pull it up on mine, can you pull up on yours that text message that I sent you? Because it brings an interesting light to this. Like, as a realist, if you're working as a buyer's agent a lot more, right? And the question was asked this, agent friends, it's kind of like this. So picture yourself this way. What if your defense lawyer turned to you and said, look, Matt, don't worry. You don't have to pay me at all. I will get a percentage of the plaintiff's attorney compensation, which is based on what you settle for. Yes, look, you know, the higher you pay to settle, the more I make. But I promise you, just trust me, Matt. I promise you I'll negotiate that number as low as possible while I represent you. How would you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the dilemma, right?
Right. And that's been the dilemma.
Yes.
And so, but that is the dilemma for, you know, again, that's been the dilemma this entire time.
Yeah.
And have the question that I'm asking on this is, who's been the one truly complaining? It hasn't been buyers that I felt.
No, this is absolutely a seller conversation, I think. And that part, I mean, it's hard for me I'm kind of down the middle on this, right? Like, I can see how, when we talk about anecdotal individual experience, right, that there are plenty of people out there who do not feel like they got value from their listing side or buy side of their transaction. We'll talk about the listing side, right? So I understand the individual conversation with people. I don't think the solution, however, is consumer to consumer directly. Like, I think that's an absolute shit show, right? I do think, though, that in order for it to be best for consumers and best for agents, I do not see the dual agency aspect of it being ideal for that either. So there's going to have to still be some cohesive collaboration between both parties when it comes to compensation.
Correct. Yeah. No, totally. And Jared Ty posted here, and Jared's been the MVP of comments the last two shows. So I definitely appreciated Jared. So Jared says, I don't think any better explaining or disclosure would have prevented this. I fundamentally disagree on that, but we can do that on a different time. As much as this doesn't help Jared, he totally understands why buyers should be able to choose how expensive an agent they do or don't hire, and sellers should have the right to not commit to a buyer's agent commission number, including the option 0 at any time of the listing agreement. So, you know, if I were to dissect what Jared put there, and number one, I do believe that if we explain this better, that we wouldn't be in this situation. You know, for the longest time, buyer's agents have been running around saying their services were free.
Yes.
Right. So again, we weren't explaining that correctly. No. And you got someone to sign a buyer's representation agreement, which is now going to be required. It's spelled in there actually what you make. But you know what people said? Don't worry. That's what
they were trained to say.
This is a formality.
Yes.
I have to put 3%, but if it's less, I'm not going to charge you any difference.
Yes.
So it was a formality, right? They weren't trained properly to educate them. Number one, how to build value for themselves. And number two, how to actually even explain their services to the client. Again, we talked about this on the show. Most buyer's agents were glorified door openers, and they've been. And that is the consumer's perception. All my agent did, they didn't even find the house, which I don't believe the agent's main responsibility is that. They didn't even find the house. All they did was open the door, and they got paid $30,000.
Do you think that you see big box brokerages going to a tiered commission system? Because, like, look, I understand why, if you are in a small market and you do 1.5 on the buy and 1.5 on the list, that is a viable business model that will make you a ton of money, right? I also understand that when you start involving huge brokerages, there's fees involved, there's more overhead. Those agents' expenses sometimes go up just because of their own business expenses.
Yep.
Do you start seeing big box brokerages going to this tiered commission model where they train agents to levels of service based off still being profitable, right? If they offer you X amount, you do this much. If you offer you the X amount, they do that much, right? Like, I don't know how that works out, but I do agree that there's a tiered commission structure that each agent could have that would be incredibly helpful going forward.
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't thought about it from that angle. I've looked at it from a couple of different angles of if, you know, again, we talked about it on last week's show, I believe, is that if the MLS is not as relevant, or there's going to be brokerages that circumvent the MLS, maybe they create their own. The largest ones will create their own because they have the listings.
Brian said forever that was a huge miss.
Yeah, that's been, I mean, Keller Williams has been trying to do that for the longest time. Gary set it up for that for the longest time, and no one really took it. And I said, look, no one needs a life preserver until they're drowning. Yeah. And so, you know, like if we look at it from this angle, if there's a couple of ways this could go, are brokerages becoming more valuable than ever, or are they not?
I actually kind of like, I had this conversation in my own brain the other day about this. Here's the thing is, and this is a totally other conversation, but does the more traditional model have a resurgence? Because, like, let's look at the model you and I are in, right? If there are less agents doing less deals for less money, are you selling me profit share and rev share, or are you selling me the ability to help me sell homes, right? Do those things become less valuable in the grand scheme of a conversation? Or is it that you can pivot and now I can show you the way through this intensely tight network of people, how you grow your business in this more difficult market? And whoever tells that conversation better is going to win whatever happens next.
Sure. And again, I think the big box brokerages, the KWs, the XPs, the Compasses, you know, the Remax, they will find ways, you know.
Yeah, you're not taking out that.
They contribute a lot to the economy, right? And so if we totally look at this again, you know, buyer's agents, you know, if we go back to Jared's comment before we go to number 3, that's not on here, right, Jesse?
I think we're hitting 4.
Oh, number 4. So no, number 3. That, you know, Jared put in here that a buyer should be able to choose how expensive of an agent they do or don't hire, and sellers should have the right to not commit. That technically has always been there, right? If we go look at this, is that, you know, again, the way I look at it, not much is actually changing fundamentally. There's going to be some kind of rules and regulations around it, but
the conversation in the living room gets turned on its head, though. You have to admit that.
Sure, yes, yeah. It's and you were out showing yesterday, but we talked about this on our sales call. Is that we're still dealing with human beings,
yeah.
And as a seller, the seller's goal and objection doesn't change. What do they want? They want to sell their home, most likely for the most amount of money or the best net to them, and on the best terms. What does a buyer want? They want to get into a home. Hopefully they don't get into a limit of a house that requires a lot of work. They want to be happy. They want to, you know, the dream of home ownership. And so buyers have always been able to choose whatever agent they want to work with. More than likely, they've used a friend or family member or a close referral connection. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, they probably did not ask for a cheaper discount. They probably didn't know they couldn't, or they didn't research it. They didn't ask for.
Can we talk about the asinine conversation around that, though?
Sure.
Was the expectation that me, as somebody who is trying to make a living, I am going to say this very clearly, I am not talking about being unethical. I am talking about normal business practices that anybody would practice. Was it really supposed to be where I walked in to a buyer's appointment and said, hey, 3% is what people say it is, but just understand I'm negotiable. Like, is that was that supposed to be the thing? Like you want to compare us to car salesmen and stuff. Like, when you walk in the car sales place, does it say on the piece of paper, like $32,000, or just ask me how much I'm willing to go down? Like that expectation on business owners from the general public and from the DOJ, or whoever wrote it, that is ridiculous. Right. And I've had a problem with that part of this conversation the whole time. It has been negotiable. You are also supposed to be a responsible adult and understand what you're walking into, right? Like, why wouldn't you go online and do a quick search? If we're going to say that there's so much technology that you can sell your own home, but you weren't smart enough to go online and see, hey, what's the best practices for me as a home seller before hiring an agent? Yeah. I just don't think you're my problem.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Nick hates it when I shit on people because he doesn't want to touch that conversation at all.
No, I agree. No, I'm not going to be. I mean, there's, you know, I think at this time, we should be allowed the freedom to express, some of our thoughts and concerns around this. I mean, this is an industry that, this is how we earn a living too.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you see people in the comments of anyone, get rid of real estate, they're not worth it.
I can deal with that.
Yeah,
I can deal with people saying dumb stuff.
Yes.
The frustrating thing is just the misinformation, and especially like the idea around like that this is going to be better. Like all of my videos are intended to kind of be like, hey, here's the real world like experience part of just what my experience is, right?
Yep.
I also like love that Jared keeps saying this. I do understand why this existed, and I'm not personally terribly bummed about it. It's going to bring down, I think, overall commissions, especially on the buy side. I also think it's going to weed out 40% of the real estate agents.
Sure.
So I don't know which one of those things I prefer more.
Yeah. So number 3, let's go to number 3 real quick. The settlement will now relieve sellers of any financial burden of any buyer's agent fees. That's false right now.
Yeah.
Like, again, although sellers can elect not to pay any buyer's agent compensation, that doesn't mean that they will avoid the economics of it. So buyers may easily write into any offer a contingency requiring that the seller cover the cost, or may request other concessions. So, I've looked at making this as another argument is like sellers say they don't want to pay this, right? And I get it. I will say that number one, I've sold probably more houses than a lot of people that I personally have owned. I have always offered a buyer's agent commission, right? Always. Because I want to expose the properties that I own to the largest amount of network of people, agents, people, whatever, that will bring a qualified buyer willing to pay the price that I'm asking. And so the homeowners who don't do that, in my opinion, they're just shrinking the pool of maybe buyers that would even come look at their property.
If you're the only house on the market, do that, right? Like there are market conditions that would allow you to take this hardline stance. I just don't think, and of course, I'm only speaking for my market. I only understand the DFW market on any level. So for me, it doesn't I just don't see this being the normal thing that happens. It will take time for this to become the new normal.
Sure. So again, in my opinion, when your home sits for a little while, let's take a scenario. You're needing to move, right? You're relocating for a job, and you have a mortgage on your property, Jesse. But you need to get to Shreveport, Louisiana, really quick.
I don't think I would do that, but
no, but you are, because you're working at the blackjack dealer at the Horseshoe.
Yes, I am
at the Horseshoe,
100%.
right? And the Horseshoe won't pay for your relocation, but you really want to become the best blackjack dealer out there, Jesse.
Already am.
Yep. And so you move, and now you've got this house over here that you got a payment on, but you're not willing to offer a comp.
I'm not
in the beginning. Guess what? An offer comes in, and in that offer, it's one that you're willing to take, but it's also asking that you pay for the buyer's agent. Are you going to do it, Jesse? That's the only offer you have. It's been on the market for 96 days.
96 days.
You've already made 3 mortgage payments.
I mean, practically I would, but I'm not the practical, common sense kind of person. I mean, I am. I would say that the non-common sense seller is probably going to say no.
Could be. Absolutely. Right. So, but at the end of the day, what will end up happening? What is the most important goal for that seller? To sell the house. That's the first one.
Sure.
Right. The second is, how much are they going to net or not net?
Well, I think for that, in that scenario, it comes down to time.
Yes.
Time is the most important.
Yeah. And if guys, if this were a COVID market, we'd be in trouble. Everyone would be in trouble, I guess, in the real estate industry, but you didn't need that.
No.
Right. And sellers also didn't need agents at that time. And we said it. You didn't need agents for the marketing of a property. The property just was going to sell itself. It was navigating through which offers were actually legit and which ones weren't, because during that time, every market's different. Right. And during that COVID market, we quickly found out that we were seeing buyers being instructed, or buyers just doing this, offering a, such a high number on a property, and then they would try to back them down throughout it, or they weren't even qualified for it, and a seller wouldn't wouldn't do the right qualifications on it.
I think people are just tired of it, right? And I don't necessarily blame them for the exhaustion, right? Like the COVID market, everything got ramped up and did not come back down. We just had a cargo ship hit a bridge that is absolutely going to increase cost of goods in the United States just due to freaking logistics, right? Like people are exhausted by being charged more.
By the way, do you think that was intentional?
Look, I don't know anything about ships. I know that huge ones that weigh that much don't stop fast, and it wasn't that far.
Jesse, have you seen the conspiracy around this?
Oh, the conspiracy around
is bonkers.
You need to go look. Supposedly, I think is the captain or something.
Is it on the TikTok?
Is Ukrainian. He got a Ukrainian citizen.
The ship's based out of another country as well. I don't know, dude. I can't live my life in that cesspool.
Kelderman, you're a TikToker now. Dude, you have to go down the conspiracy.
I have 750 followers. I have
get that tinfoil hat out.
Yeah,
I make them mad on TikTok. That's
exactly. All right, let's go to number 4. Number 4 is the settlement ultimately reduces the total cost of transaction services as sellers would no longer pay buyer's agent compensation. Again, this is false.
Yeah.
Right. So should sellers now choose to compensate only the listing agent, it merely means that buyers rather than sellers will now have to pay for their own representation if they don't require the seller to pay as a contingency of the contract. And so, it doesn't reduce the overall. Now it could reduce it just by a hair, but for the buyer's side of things, if we see more buyers pay for their own representation.
I just think it's a conversation about position and leverage every single time. Real estate agent is a one-to-one business. My conversations in the living room with sellers is absolutely going to be reflective about their personal position in the market. I have been doing mad amounts of open houses this month in some of our most hot markets. And I will tell you right now, like every house is not created equal. There are some that are not going to sell that would benefit from an incentive on the buyer or to the buyer in the form of the commission being paid to their agent, right? And there are some that are in other areas that you probably don't even need an agent. And I will say any agent who's having the conversation of you absolutely have to use an agent, otherwise you don't know what you're going to do, that is incorrect. But there are markets where agents are absolutely going to continue to have value. That value is not based on whatever your personal mindset is around it. Again, it's based on what that particular seller and that particular buyer see in that particular agent based off of what they're able to do for them. That's why I think for agents' standpoint, and I say this myself included, remember that this is a one-to-one business, and you are going to be able to help individual buyers and sellers, and you are going to be able to bring them value that they are able to determine, right? It's not what the comment section says. Right, or whatever else.
Number 5 is my favorite. We'll get to that in a minute. But Terry Pescator, if buyers have to pay their agents, right, if they have to pay, they're going to offer less. The argument has always been sellers set the price with 6% included. We kind of talked about that, by the way, because as far back as 92 that we saw, I mean, we could probably go even further, but that's over 30 years.
Yeah.
The average commission's just been...
That was just a couple of years ago, right?
92? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Exactly. But... it's been just a hair under 6%. I think it was a little over 6%. One like 6.04%. It was the highest that I think I saw.
Yeah, that was in the early 90s.
Yeah, and so the buyer feels that they really ultimately pay the price. Jesse took me off the screen there. Sorry. Pay the commission because they're paying with what the seller wants. This is something that number 5, this speaks to number 5, is the settlement will serve to lower real estate prices and make homeownership affordable again.
This is the worst part about this whole thing.
I've seen people say this.
Oh, this is what this isn't people. This is what everyone believes. They believe that getting real estate agents out of the market will then return equity to people's pockets. That is what they absolutely are dying on that sword right now.
And people think it's going to lower prices.
Yes.
Yeah.
How?
That's my whole point is they think it's going to overall make the consumer more money in the form of lower prices or savings in equity. It's not. And the sellers, I'm going to tell you right now, any buyers who are arguing that this was a good thing, which I think buyers are the ones who should be the most pissed off about this.
Yes.
But from a seller perspective, the sellers are out there saying how they would much rather prefer with you directly because then they will get what they want for the house. Right. That has been a common conversation of, well, if they don't want to pay me what it's worth, then I'm just not going to sell it to them. I promise you, dealing directly with a home seller in most cases is not going to be the easiest, like calmest waters possible.
Well, I look at it from this, right? Like, number one, we've all been, and Terry's been in the business longer than us, right? I know Terry for a long time, and how many times have we run across a for sale by owner? In fact, it's probably 100% of the time. How many for sale by owners have lowered their price come in with a lower asking price because they weren't paying commission. It's crickets because it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
They don't do that, right? Because what do people do? They're like, oh, I looked at market value.
Yes.
And then they price it actually a little bit above market, because in their mind, what they're doing is they need
leaving room for negotiation.
Yep. They want to leave room for negotiation. I'm going to come down. I'm going to go a little bit above market because I know people are going to negotiate against me.
And they're not wrong. I got lots of buyers who just haggle for the sake of haggling too.
Sure.
Like, I get it.
Sure. I mean, that's what I do when I buy cars.
And I would too. There's no way I'm walking in and just now in the COVID market when there were 15 offers, obviously that was different. But I will say we submitted an offer yesterday that was 5% below asking price. Right. Like, and we're having a conversation back and forth now.
So what we are going to need to do as buyer representatives, and you're going to start seeing this more and more, right? And this is something we've talked about at a high level, and most buyer, if most real estate agents are more buyer heavy anyway, because I'm going to say
easier money.
It's easier money. I'm careful on my words on that right now.
From an explanation standpoint, it's easier. You do not have to justify your job and your ability to a buyer as much as you do to a seller. That's where it's easier.
And it's the fun part of that process, right? You get to go look at homes, and it's the more exciting part versus typically selling there's more emotions involved in selling. But usually that buying, especially with first-time home buyers, it's exciting. And what we see on this though is if you track it, you can ask the majority of anybody that represents more buyers than not. If you ask them, all right, how much on average have you saved your client percentage wise? They won't know that.
No.
What's the average seller concessions you've got for them? They're not going to know that.
No.
Right. And in my opinion, those are going to be the two biggest things that you're going to see. On average, if you work with Matt Kelderman, I save my clients 3 to 4% off of the asking price, and at the same time, I'm able to get on average $5,000 to $6,000 in seller concessions added to cover your closing costs, to cover XYZ, blah blah blah.
So I have done a really great job over my career of keeping a spreadsheet of all of my transactions, buyers and seller transactions. My assistant on Monday got a video from me to go back and look at all of those transactions and do exactly what you are talking about. He is looking now. The seller concessions part is a little bit harder because while it's listed in the MLS, it looks like some of my older transactions, the seller concessions weren't listed in the MLS. So that's going to be
or the agent didn't.
Yeah. Hey, we've been tracking 3-pointers since 1979. Like there's going to be some incompleteness in the numbers, but that is exactly the metrics he is going back and look, because knowing your numbers and understanding where you have saved people money is going down. It's not going to be really easy to do on the inspection report side, but you can certainly do it on list price versus sales price. And then I can do it when it comes to seller concessions towards that price. And those are two key metrics that are absolutely going to be part of my buyer conversation now.
Yep, absolutely. And you're going to see more. You're going to see more bragging on that. And this is, I do think there's a couple of things as we get into number 6. I do feel that this is also going to hurt. As a newer agent, you're getting into this. You don't have the experience yet. Right. So, I know, Matt, you had someone say, hey, I'm getting into real estate. Is this is this a bad time?
Yeah.
Are they getting rid of all this? Where I do believe it's going to make it harder for new agents is that they're not going to be able to have that experience of getting hired or of how much they've saved or whatever it may be. So you may see those agents doing it for a flat fee to get it going.
Yes.
And in my opinion, we've talked about this, at least in Texas. I believe that honestly, the industry should change anyway. Like as if you're an appraiser, you have to go through an apprenticeship.
Yeah. Inspectors
have to go through an apprenticeship, right? Electricians have to be a journeyman, right? Plumbers have to work their way up.
I've stayed away from that conversation, but I think there is some guidelines that NAR could have set out around continued mentorship and training after the fact that would have actually would have made this look a little bit less like driving the bus over real estate agents.
What about the states? By the way, the states,
yeah,
no one's talked about this. This has been a big moneymaker for their states. The Texas Real Estate Commission fees get paid to them.
Yeah.
Right. This is a money opportunity for them and or a less money grab for them.
Well, I had to educate some people on that because everybody thought everything was just generally available, and not saying that it's hard to get comparables, but people didn't even know about non-disclosure states.
Correct.
Right? They had no clue that there were 12 non-disclosure states where there's just, of course, there's different avenues, but that getting that information isn't easily accessible as it is in others.
So as we look at this, is like, should your state that you're in, should they change and require again an apprenticeship? I know Terry just said this. She said for years, said realtors need to apprentice from 1 to 2 years. And to get that footing, because we are working with one of the largest financial assets that, the average American, the average citizen is buying and or selling.
Do you think that this has just became, and I think there's just so much ease in getting your real estate license, and we've made it look so cool on TV that people saw even 15 years ago real estate agents as a little bit of an asset because they didn't know 15,000 of them. Is this just like everything's cool until everybody has one and then it sucks? There's just so many real estate agents that it's like, it's not cool anymore. We're tired of it. There's so many of you that are bad that like, we're just done with all of you in general.
That's it. I like that kind of thought process. I think that yes. And, I knew people in the past, and this was years ago, that didn't sell anything and waited there in Texas 2 years so they could become a broker. Then they opened up their brokerage and started attracting agents in. And, these new agents were following this broker or brokers whom had zero experience selling real estate, but they waited their time frame out, did their continuing education. And like, it was the blind, in my opinion, blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
And I thought there was something broken with that. And, for people like us who take, we really pour our hearts and souls into this and educate and, want to provide not just the best experience, because everyone should have a great experience, right? Anybody that, we've always said this too, is like, why should you hire me? Well, I'm going to give you great service or the best experience. And I'm like, shouldn't everyone get that? Or that I'm a hard worker and I'm trustworthy?
Yes.
Shouldn't everyone get a hard worker, and shouldn't everyone be trustworthy?
It's like asking for extra credit for the job that you signed up for, right? It's like as a parent, you're like, I've fed them every day. Well, of course you're supposed to. Like providing a professional, good experience for your clients isn't extra credit. It's the baseline expectation.
Absolutely. And I do want to trust this Rugolo put in here, but when you're in an EXP model, right, and you're in an EXP model, you don't care how good they are, but rather if they can recruit. That's not true. Like, again, by the way, I'm at EXP.
Yeah.
That is fundamentally not true, because number one, if that was the case, then I would be getting filthy rich because I've recruited quite a bit of people here. Yeah. And what matters is helping them get into production and providing that model. So that, again, I wanted to bring that up because that's fundamentally not true. And those are, again, anybody who's like, oh, it's a recruiting model. By the way, you recruit buyers and sellers every day, and there's a lot of shitty agents out there, Rugolo.
Well, that goes right back to the agent thing too, though. If we know that agents are doing so few deals, that just recruiting them in somewhere is not going to guarantee finances. Everybody in that model is incentivized to make sure that people under them do better. Otherwise, there's no money for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's look at this number 6. Number 6, the settlement is a fantastic win for buyers who will now be able to negotiate the fee for representation. So they put in this highly questionable. I do think, number one, you're going to see this happening more because it as an agent, right? So for those who have purchased one or more homes over the years, it is more than likely that you were quite happy to have the seller compensate your agent. So you didn't have to. For buyers who had to scrape up enough money for the down payment and closing expenses, having the commission paid by the seller and incorporated into the price of the home allowed the buyers to finance the amount over time rather than coming up with thousands of additional dollars at closing. I don't think that we're going to see that. I think that, number one, we're going to see more offers still with some type of comp plan in place, right? That the seller's still going to pay the buyer's representative. I also believe that, in multiple offer situations, and it's multiple offers, then the agent may need to suggest, or the buyer may need to also say, hey, multiple offers, something's got to give here. Mm-hmm. I may offer a little bit more, but your comp needs to come down. Right. So multiple offer situations, we may see that happening.
I think, but I also think this doesn't necessarily incentivize multiple offer situations at certain price points either. Price sensitive price points where we know there's a glut of VA or FHA buyers who aren't typically bringing the most cash down possible. Like those price points are going to see a decrease in every other metric as well. Once all of this goes into effect, right? This idea that all of this just happens on one side of a card is kind of silly to me. You're absolutely going to see less buyers be able to afford a certain price point of homes. And while that may not feel like a big deal right now to people, right? In the super immediate, because I sold my house, I don't care. The trickle down effect of this, I believe, is ultimately, at the very least, home prices tapering off. We've seen what, average 4.5%, 5% year over year traditionally of increase in home sales. Like, do you really feel like you won that much if year over year your home price increase drops by 1.5% and you live in that house for 10 years? Did you really win because you didn't have a glut of buyers to choose from and that kept the market hot? Like, it just, to me, it just seems like it's all guessing and we're all planning on whatever happening next, but it just doesn't seem as helpful as people wanted it to be.
Sure. You know, Jared said, what about the buyers who will be happy that their offer with 1% requested BAC might have a greater, you know, chance of winning the bid than the other one asking for 3% BAC assistance?
Where does, okay, so here's my question. This is the one thing I don't know about this, and this is a legitimate question. Let's say there is a 1.5% BAC being charged by the buyer's agent, but there is a 2.5% listing or BAC being offered by the seller. That money goes to that percent. Does it stay with the seller? I don't see a scenario where it kicks back to the listing agent. I don't think there's any scenario where that happens.
No, because
is it the buyer's money? Because it was being offered, the seller contractually agreed to that money, right? And then just because it wasn't accepted, does it now switch over to some sort of buyer incentive, or does it just drop to the 1.5%? The seller ultimately wins, which I'm fine with that. I'm just curious how that goes because I don't know that part of it yet.
There's no more official offered amount. Is that offered amount from commissions?
Yeah. So no one. So okay. So let's say that we don't know what it is. I guess maybe I'm not asking this question correctly a little bit, but we don't know what the offered amount. BAC can't be fixed in listing agreement. Okay, so that's different.
That's actually not true.
Yeah, I don't.
That's not true.
So I know that it can't be listed in the MLS. We've all talked to that ad nauseum at this point. But like, my question is, okay, so then pop it up there somewhere. Like, Jared, and sincerely, will you go to the filing and show me where it says that? Because I missed that part. I thought, obviously, know the stuff from the MLS, but my indication was that's still agreed upon prior to listing. It's just not known.
Well, and it will be known. So it will be known because it can be on. So if it's not on MLS, but it can be offered on public webs, like on the agent's website. Right. So there's a lot of discrepancy around this, but and it can right now, the way we see listing agreements being drafted up, is that it still would be in there. There's going to be ways that you can offer it. It has to be in writing on that, though. So
I do believe, though, with the last thing, that I think a lot of sellers, their giant like line in the sand is going to be just bring an offer, right? That's what they're going to instruct their agents to. I do think buyers agents are going to find themselves, because I made a video about being able to ask and all that other stuff. But I do think buyers agents are going to have to get very comfortable with making that offer not based on what it is. And here's the deal. That's I don't say this negatively, like I don't care about it, but that this lawsuit has shifted that to being the buyer's problem. The buyer has signed an agreement that says they're willing to pay X. So if it's less than that, the buyer now has to make a preliminary decision based off their offer, knowing that your commission's included into it, right?
And I don't
think it's seller's best offer.
This will start to see, we could start seeing more off-market deals happening where it says, give me a couple of weeks to try to sell it this way. This is where, Jesse, some of my opinions about big box brokerages maybe where, the big brands or the big boxes with a ton of agents that actually have a lot of listings, they start to become more valuable.
Listing agents are going to be very valuable. Yes.
Well, I agree with that, because especially if they can create their own MLS or listing service, we won't call it an MLS because, you can't list on that.
Everybody's putting on Zillow.
If they create their own listing service and they're able to offer commission on that, then that's where they start to become more valuable. And then the MLS kind of goes away. But does the MLS ever really go away? I guess that's the question you have to ask.
But just does it become less powerful, right?
And did we talk about the MLS? And this is a little bit of ignorance about how the MLS systems work, but are we talking about the MLS as the MLS? Or is the MLS a whole bunch of tiny little things that are all put together that if a few people opted out, absolutely fractures? Because it feels a lot more like that.
Each association, so there's different MLSs that are owned, right? So they're owned by different,
I love that people think the MLS is the free part of this. We'll just put it on Zillow. It'll just be everywhere. It's like, you guys understand there's like 2 layers of people getting paid before that shit gets on Zillow?
Yeah. And people are like, this will just turn Zillow. I believe we touched on this subject.
Zillow and Redfin are going to have a problem with their incoming lead platform. I don't know what they still make from stuff, but I know a lot of Zillow's revenue used to be from selling leads to agents, and that's not nearly as valuable, I think, going forward as it once was.
Well, Zillow for sure. I didn't know Redfin sold leads.
Well, Redfin has the agent partner thing where they pay, where they take the 3% on the buy side that the seller is offering, and then offer a small percentage of it back to the Redfin partner agent or their salary agent.
Gotcha. So, I mean, I think that number one is that, you know, this could fracture the MLS a little bit more, and does this open it up to where we start seeing a little bit of you know, that commercial world? New York City has their own MLS system, or not MLS system.
We talked about this at lunch. Consumers do not want this to become commercial real estate.
Yeah, they hate it. So let's go to number 7. Number 7 is this settlement will result in significant restitution to the real estate consumers who were harmed over recent years in their transactions by realtors.
They did the math on this. I think it's like $10 a person.
It's right here.
Yeah, it is. So the settlement figure is huge. Yet when one divides the amount by the number of potentially qualifying consumers, it works out to about $10 per person.
Go get yourself a coffee.
I think I saw the attorneys submitted fees to
$82.4 million.
$82.5 million.
Yeah. So I know you guys are worried about that 3%, but if you do the math on that,
40%,
I think it's going to add up to more than 3.
Yeah. And again, this was, you know, to
winner.
You know, who again, it's disrupting, and who's it disrupting? And you know, it's interesting to kind of see how all this falls.
NARS said they will not raise fees at least through 2025. I absolutely anticipate them raising fees in 2026, which maybe is a little bit more of the barrier to entry that some of us are wanting, right? It's not that it's cheap to keep your real estate license, but I'll also admit it's not some impossible amount of money. If you're selling some homes, it costs you a couple grand a year to keep your license.
Yeah.
In some of the most expensive places. So, you know, maybe in a couple of years it'll be more expensive and everybody will get their wish.
Yeah. I will say that I don't see us, unless there's other breaking stuff right now, I don't see us really covering this much more on it.
I'm exhausted by this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm ready for it to be done.
I don't think there's much more to cover.
I don't think there really is.
Actually happens.
I think at this point we would just be beating a dead horse and kind of looking like a bunch of whiners.
And I will say, going back to, like, I know I was talking to Elizabeth Austin, and she's working her tail off. She's got like 13 clients right now, and
that's awesome.
And so, like, go back, business as usual, guys. Like, you know, when there's fear in the streets, there's opportunity. Yeah. Right. In the sheets is what Jesse says.
That's I said.
He's got it tattooed on his left thigh.
Yeah. The inside, actually.
That's how he got Katie. So, you know, so that's the biggest part of this is, like, you know, let's take advantage of, you know, really working this when there's other people fearful is now this is your chance of opportunity gain. And so, go back, leave us a review. Actually, there's a review. There is a review, and I can't pull it up, but Jesse can. We have to there is a 5-star review, and I want you guys to leave us more. So wherever you're consuming this, whether it's on Apple, YouTube, Facebook, leave comments, share this out, tag people in it, please. That's how we get some traction on this, and it really helps our to support our sponsors of the show. We don't get paid a lot of money to do this.
No, you know how many checks I've collected from the Only Real Estate Podcast?
You know what? The people in the settlement got more money than us.
Yes, dude.
Doing the show. So here is the 5-star review. And it's by Matt's in jail. Matt is going to jail. Best podcast ever. Best podcast ever if Matt is going to jail. But really great podcast with insightful conversations around real estate. Y'all check it out.
The best thing about
5
this,
stars.
I don't exactly know how how these reviews work, but somebody took the time to go. First off, we have 79 ratings. And why is there a little blip on the 1-star? I want to know what Dick gave us a 1-star. But
it's probably someone who doesn't like the curse.
Probably doesn't. It's probably that. What was that lady's name? But I love that somebody went and created an account that named it Matt's in Jail. Or were they just able, is that a description? And they were like, what do you want to name this? And they were like, my name's Matt's in Jail. It's not like Jeff.
That's because you had a TikTok guy saying you're going to jail.
Oh yeah, they've been on me this week. I just posted one right before I came in here, and they are buzzing like hornets right now.
But if you can do us a favor, look, like we said, we make less than the people that got the lawsuit settlement. They're $10, so it tells you how much we get paid to do the show. But our sponsors help us bring this together. So, you know, you do just go and support them. Hey, Christina Smallhorn.
What up?
Friend of the show.
Don't come and look for another 6 minutes. We haven't been on.
We're almost an hour in. But go support Mortgage Mike. If you're wanting that Mortgage Mike stamp of approval, he's given loans left and right in Texas and Oklahoma. So Mortgage Mike, mmgloans.com. And so just tell them the guys over at the Only Real Estate Podcast worth listening to sent you. as well as you know who it is, Theron Smith. He's got 2 Facebook accounts. I need to ask him about that.
I don't understand.
It just popped up as a recommendation today. So unless he's got someone,
I'm not
imitating
your secondary account. I'm not going to go into anybody's secondary account.
Yeah.
You're not that cool.
Yeah. So we need to ask Theron about that. But he's given those hard shell protections on home warranty. So armadillo.1/Tor, TORE. And then property management. These property managers are out here like, yeah, what is this lawsuit?
They're not. No, they don't. They're not worried about this at all.
Yeah, they're over here worrying about.
If anything,
evictions.
they're like, how do we pick up more investment properties and all this while everybody's not looking?
Exactly. It's like less realtors. We don't need them because they're over here worrying about people paying rents and not. So get with Dana Wynn at Homeward DFW, homewarddfw.com. And then look, it's time to do a podcast.
As many people are electing to do, by the way.
Yeah, Jesse is busy over here.
I will tell you, like I've seen
tomorrow.
the background. I have seen this beautiful background in some of our lovely friends' videos, but I know very soon there's gonna be another live being launched out of here, which nobody else is
find out tomorrow.
has the stones to do. Somebody else is gonna go live, I'm mad respect. Putting yourself out there unfiltered.
I love it. So get with tourstudios.com. I know Jesse's doing some video editing work. He can do a lot of that kind of stuff for you. So yeah, and then YouTube. Hit us up on YouTube, leave comments, subscribe, 5-star review on Spotify. I know a lot of people listen on Spotify now.
I know. I was looking at some of the stuff you guys sent out, and it's cool.
Apple. Go over to the podcast. I don't even know. They just call it podcast on Apple.
Yeah. Go follow Nick and I on TikTok. I know it's ridiculous from 2 dudes with beards that look like this and have this much white in them, but we're trying to do something. So go follow us.
I had no white other than until the lawsuit settlement.
Yeah, you were just fine. Exactly.
Yeah.
Nah, I hear this is a good thing now.
That's because I'm making $30,000 checks.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
So, all right, guys. Next week we will be back with hopefully Force
doing something.
We'll be talking about the top steps of how to build your business. I guarantee you.
We'll figure it out on Wednesday
Real estate
morning.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
You guys can just deal with whatever we bring you.
Hey, thank you for watching. We truly appreciate it. Checking out another episode of the only real estate podcast worth listening to. If you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead, hit that share button, hit that like button, and hit the subscribe button. Right? We're dropping more stuff on YouTube constantly. If you're on iTunes, leave us a review, please. We're really, really focused on building up those reviews so we can get more searchable content on there. And if you're on Facebook, like everyone else is, go over and search the only real estate group worth being a part of. You're going to want to go join that group. I'm telling you right now, there's so much gold in there. So go join, share us on YouTube, and leave us that iTunes review, please. Go do it right now. We'll see you on the next show.